He is sitting somewhere right now. Not dramatically, not in ruins. Just sitting in a car he hasn't started yet. In an apartment that got too quiet too fast. In the particular stillness of 11:47 p.m. when the phone is in his hand and there is a name in the search bar. He hasn't typed yet but hasn't deleted either. A song came on, not even a song that meant anything. Just a tempo, a chord that landed wrong. And suddenly he is somewhere he didn't choose to be, feeling something he doesn't have the architecture to explain. He thought leaving would feel like exhaling. He had rehearsed the relief. He knew with absolute certainty the specific lightness waiting on the other side of that conversation. More space, more air, more of himself returned to himself. That was the prediction, and for a few days it arrived almost exactly as promised. Then something else came, and it wasn't what he expected, and it hasn't left since. This video is everything he is thinking and will never say. Not to you, not to anyone. Psychology has mapped this experience with uncomfortable precision. It has a name, a mechanism, a predictable sequence. And that sequence is unfolding in him right now. Whether he admits it or not, what follows is not speculation. It is the interior account of what actually happens inside a man after he walks away from something, real and told fully, for the first time, in the language it deserves. Stay with this. He thought freedom would feel like freedom. That was the first miscalculation, and it was not a small one. Psychologists call this affective forecasting, our attempt to predict how a future emotional state will actually feel. And research shows with striking consistency that we are remarkably bad at it. We overestimate how good things will feel. We underestimate how hollow certain choices become when we are finally living inside them. He predicted relief. He got a version of it. But he did not predict the silence that followed. Not peaceful silence. He had wanted that, even romanticized it. This was a different kind, the kind that doesn't rest, the kind that makes a man reach for his phone not because he has something to say, but because the absence of a specific voice has started to feel like a sound of its own. While he was sitting in that silence, recalibrating, you were doing something he will never fully account for. You were grieving something real, honestly, the way only someone who loved with their whole chest knows how to do. That grief was not weakness. It was the exact measure of what you had. Some time passed, and then he encountered someone else, not necessarily seriously, maybe just proximity, maybe just a conversation. And in one ordinary moment, a laugh that didn't land the same way, a silence that felt like absence rather than comfort, a small kindness that felt thinner than it should. He measured, without deciding to, without noticing at first. He held this new person against a standard he hadn't consciously set, and the comparison was not kind. This is what psychologists call the contrast effect. The way our perception of something is shaped not by what it is alone, but by what we've experienced before it. And the cruelest version of this effect is the one he was now living, where everything after a certain person makes the loss more exact, not less, where every new interaction doesn't replace the measurement, it sharpens it. She was the standard. He just didn't know it until he tried to replace her. That sentence arrived in him like a verdict, quiet but total. He hadn't been trying to find someone better. He was just existing, moving forward the way you do. And the world kept sending him reminders he hadn't asked for. A quality of attention he recognized, a specific kind of ease he had stopped noticing until it was no longer there. He understood somewhere in the body before the mind caught up, that what he'd been searching for had already happened to him once, and he had categorized it as ordinary. There is a reason she won't leave his mind. Not sentiment, not weakness, biology. The human brain processes an unfinished thing differently than a completed one. It leaves a loop open. It returns to it, uninvited, intrusive, with the compulsive regularity of checking a wound. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Incomplete experiences live with more neurological urgency than resolved ones. His mind didn't get a clean ending, so it keeps returning to the file, trying to close it, finding it won't close, returning again, but it is more than that. Attachment produces real neurological responses, oxytocin, dopamine, the specific comfort of a nervous system that has learned to regulate against another person's presence. When that presence disappears, the body doesn't philosophize. The body withdraws. The same neural pathways that fired in warmth and safety now fire in absence. And the brain, trying to resolve the loop, keeps generating the thought, he cannot stop. The involuntary flash of her face in the middle of something unrelated, the instinct to share something funny before the instinct to not, and then the arrival of where that instinct leads, and the stillness that follows. That particular stillness, that is where he lives now. He had been protected for a while by a narrative, The mind arranges the facts of a painful choice into a shape that feels like wisdom rather than error. He had convinced himself with reasonable success that leaving was right, that she was fine, that what he'd left was something he'd outgrown rather than something he'd failed to understand. Then one ordinary night, not a significant night, not a night that announced itself, something dismantled all of it. Maybe it was a photograph, a mutual friend who mentioned her name in passing. Just, she seems good. And the specific violence of those 3 words. Maybe it was a date on the calendar he realized he'd remembered without meaning to. Something small, something only he would track. And in that moment the story broke open at a seam he hadn't known was there. The protection stopped. And what was underneath it was not guilt exactly, not grief exactly. It was recognition, full, unguarded, undeniable recognition of what he had been holding and what he had put down, and that he would not be allowed to pick it back up. The heaviest thing a man can carry is the clear-eyed understanding that he made a choice that cannot be unmade, and that the choice was wrong. He started searching, not for someone new. The contrast effect had made that a dead end, and he knew it. He was searching for something more specific, a quality, a feeling, a particular kind of safety he had never had to name before because it had always just been there. In the room, in the way she moved through their shared life with an ease he had cataloged as simple rather than rare. What he was searching for had her face, her specific way of listening that made him feel like what he was saying was worth saying, her ability to make an ordinary Tuesday feel like something that had been chosen. He had been swimming in that water so long he had called it ordinary. He had confused depth with comfort and ease with simplicity. And only now, reaching for something he couldn't find because it was not elsewhere to be found, did he understand exactly what he had been given. What you gave him was not love in the abstract. It was specific. It was the thing you understood about him that he had never said directly. The quality of safety you created, not by protecting him from the world, but by making him feel like whatever he was right now was enough. You were doing all of that without announcement. And because you gave it without performance, he experienced it as atmosphere, as water. Not the thing he was swimming in, just the condition of existing near you. He knows now, not approximately, not with room to negotiate completely. And the door is closed. This is the grief that has no ceremony. He cannot mourn this loudly. He cannot name the loss to anyone without naming the cause of it, which is himself. He carries it in a register no one sees. He knows the sentence he would say. He knows exactly how he would begin, what he would need her to understand, how he would say that the version of him that left was working with incomplete information and incomplete courage. He will not say it, not because he doesn't mean it, because meaning it doesn't grant him the right to deliver it, because the version of him that walked away is not the version that gets to walk back through. Here is what psychology confirms, and what he will almost certainly never say out loud. The moment of realization is not a redemption arc. It is simply the moment the cost becomes impossible to deny. He did not lose a relationship. He lost a person, a specific, irreplaceable person who loved him in a way that required her to be entirely herself. The cost was her. The cost is what he carries now quietly, in everything he chose and everything he didn't. And you need to hear what that means about you. What you carried in that relationship was real. It was significant. It was not invisible. It was simply unseen by the specific person who needed to see it most. That is not the same thing as being unseen. You were the standard. You were the quality that nothing else could reach. You were the person his nervous system wrote in as the definition of safe. And that is not a small thing to be. That is the thing. His leaving was not a verdict on your worth. Read that again. His leaving was a reflection of his own incomplete understanding, of himself, of you, of what he was holding. Men who leave things they don't fully understand are not delivering a judgment. They are revealing a limitation, and his limitation was not your ceiling. It was his. Here is the line you needed someone to say to you at the time, and no one did. You were enough. You were more than enough. You were, in fact, the full thing, the real thing. And the failure to recognize that was not located anywhere inside you. What is still ahead of you is not just someone better. That framing is too thin. What is ahead of you is someone who stays present while you're still in the room. Someone who catalogs you as rare, not after losing you. Not in the 2 a.m. accounting, but now while you're right there, being exactly yourself. Someone whose recognition of your value doesn't require your absence to activate. That is what you deserve. That is what you do not need his realization to validate what you already know. Your worth was never contingent on his capacity to perceive it. You were already worth it before he left. You were worth it during. You are worth it now. His reckoning is his to carry, not yours to wait for. His mistake was not leaving. His mistake was not understanding what he had while he was still standing inside it. And that is entirely, completely, and only on him. If this said something you needed to hear today, let it land. Share it with someone who needs it too. And if you want more of this, the psychology, the truth, the things that don't usually get said out loud, subscribe and stay close. You are not defined by someone else's failure to see you. You never